Have you ever wondered why, no matter how much you try to move on, something inside you still feels stuck? Why certain memories still shake you? Why certain people still trigger you? Why healing feels like a battle you can't win? This video isn't about pretending to be okay. It's about finally understanding your trauma, finally facing it, and finally healing for real. Not superficially, not temporarily, but deeply. If you're tired of carrying the weight of your past, stay with me. This might be the moment everything changes for you. Number one, awareness is the first breakthrough. Awareness is the moment everything changes because it forces you to confront what you've been running from, sometimes for years, sometimes for a lifetime. Most people think they can outgrow their trauma simply by moving forward, distracting themselves, staying busy, or pretending that their past no longer affects them. But trauma doesn't dissolve with time. It hides beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to resurface through triggers, emotional breakdowns, unhealthy patterns, and sudden bursts of anxiety. Awareness is the first breakthrough because it turns the invisible into something you can finally see. And once you see it, you can no longer ignore it. You can no longer rationalize it away or pretend that it wasn't real. Awareness is uncomfortable, even painful, but it's the moment you reclaim ownership of your healing. Awareness starts with allowing yourself to admit, yes, something happened to me. That single acknowledgement begins to loosen the knots inside your chest. For years, you may have minimized what you experienced because you believed that being strong meant staying silent, or because the people who hurt you convinced you that your pain was an exaggeration. Many survivors don't even realize how much they've normalized chaos or emotional neglect until one day they pause long enough to feel the weight they've been carrying. Awareness asks you to sit with the truth you've been avoiding, the truth that something impacted you deeply, even if you didn't have words for it back then. It also means recognizing how that impact shaped your behaviors, your reactions, your relationships, and even your self-worth. This is not about blaming yourself. It's about finally seeing the connection between your inner wounds and your outer world. The more honest you become with yourself, the more awareness grows. You start noticing the moments where you shut down emotionally, not because you don't care, but because your mind learned to protect itself. You recognize the situations that make you feel unsafe, not because the present is dangerous, but because your body still remembers the past. You begin to trace patterns, why you overextend yourself, why you withdraw, why you overthink, why you expect the worst. Awareness turns these patterns into signals instead of punishments. It gives you clarity about what you need to heal rather than convincing you that you are the problem. Awareness is a steady unfolding, a moment-by-moment commitment to telling the truth, even when the truth is hard to face. Number two, stop minimizing. What hurt you? One of the most damaging habits people develop after experiencing trauma is the instinct to downplay what they went through. It often starts subtly with phrases like, "It wasn't that bad," or "Other people have suffered more than me." Over time, this becomes a mental reflex, a protective mechanism meant to shield you from the heaviness of your own truth. Minimizing your pain can feel like strength because it allows you to avoid the intensity of your emotions, but in reality, it disconnects you from yourself. When you diminish your experiences, you teach your nervous system that your feelings are not valid, your memories are not trustworthy, and your suffering is not worth acknowledging. This emotional suppression doesn't erase the trauma, it buries it deeper. And buried pain grows roots. It shows up in your relationships, your self-esteem, your boundaries, and the stories you tell yourself about who you are. People minimize their trauma for many reasons: shame, guilt, fear of judgment, fear of remembering, or because the people involved convinced them that their experience wasn't significant. Sometimes trauma survivors normalize the dysfunction they grew up with because it was all they ever knew. When neglect, manipulation, or emotional instability becomes familiar, it becomes easy to believe that nothing really happened. But the body knows the truth even when the mind tries to rewrite it. You may find yourself getting emotionally overwhelmed by small things, feeling triggered by seemingly insignificant situations, or reacting in ways you don't fully understand. These reactions are your body reminding you that something mattered, even if you've spent years telling yourself it didn't. Minimizing your pain doesn't protect you, it fragments you. It forces you to split between the part of you that lived the trauma and the part of you that pretends everything is fine. The moment you stop minimizing what hurt you is the moment you begin to reconnect with yourself. This means giving yourself permission to validate your own pain without comparing it to anyone else's. Trauma is not a competition. Suffering doesn't become legitimate only when it is the worst story in the room. Your pain deserves acknowledgement simply because it changed you. Recognizing the reality of your experience doesn't make you weak, it makes you honest. And honesty is essential for healing. When you allow the truth to come forward, even quietly, you begin to integrate the parts of yourself that you shoved aside. You realize that your emotions, reactions, and memories all make sense based on what you endured. You start treating yourself with more compassion because you finally understand the weight you've been carrying. You begin to give your inner world the attention it has always needed. Number 3, your nervous system needs safety. First, healing from trauma isn't just an emotional process, it's a biological one. When you've lived through experiences that overwhelmed your ability to cope, your nervous system adapts in ways meant to keep you alive, not necessarily to keep you calm. It learns to stay alert, to anticipate danger, to scan for threats even in safe environments. This is why people who carry trauma often feel restless, anxious, or on edge without knowing why. It's not that they are too sensitive or overreacting, it's that their bodies are still prepared for the worst. Before you can process your past or change your patterns, your nervous system needs to relearn something fundamental: safety. Without that, every attempt at healing becomes a struggle because your body cannot relax into the present when it's still bracing for the past. When the nervous system is stuck in survival mode, even small stressors can feel overwhelming. A tone of voice, a sudden sound, a memory, or even silence can trigger physiological reactions: tightness in your chest, shallow breathing, racing thoughts, tension in your muscles. These reactions are not flaws, they are signals. Your body is communicating that it doesn't yet trust its surroundings or even itself. That's why healing begins with creating internal and external environments where safety is possible. This may mean slowing down your pace, building routines, reducing chaos, or stepping away from people who keep your nervous system activated. Safety isn't only about physical protection, it's about emotional predictability, boundaries, and moments of calm that allow your system to reset. When your body feels safe, your mind gains the space to process what it once had to survive. You cannot think your way into healing if your body is still in survival mode. Practices like deep breathing, grounding, meditation, somatic exercises, and gentle movement help signal to your nervous system that the danger has passed. These are not cliches or quick fixes, they are relearning tools. They help retrain your body to understand that you are no longer living inside the circumstances that once harmed you. Sometimes healing also requires professional support. Therapists who understand trauma physiology, environments that promote rest, or communities that make you feel seen rather than judged. Every time you offer your system even a small moment of safety, you reclaim a piece of your calm. It takes time, repetition, and patience, but the nervous system can be rewired. It can unlearn fear, it can release tension, and it can learn to trust life again. Number 4, you heal when you stop blaming yourself. Self-blame is one of the deepest wounds trauma leaves behind, and for many people, it becomes the silent narrative shaping their entire identity. When something painful happens, especially something you didn't choose, didn't understand, or couldn't prevent, your mind tries to make sense of it. And instead of placing responsibility where it belongs, it turns inward. You start believing that you should have known better, should have seen the signs, should have fought harder, should have left sooner. The word should becomes a weapon you use against yourself. What most people don't realize is that self-blame is a coping mechanism. It gives you the illusion of control. It makes you feel like if the trauma was somehow your fault, then maybe you could have prevented it, or maybe you can avoid it in the future. But this illusion comes with a price. It keeps you stuck. It keeps you small, and it keeps you carrying guilt that never belonged to you in the first place. When you live in a cycle of self-blame, you start rewriting the past through the lens of shame. You forget what you didn't know at the time. You forget how limited your options were. You forget the power dynamic, the fear, the confusion, the pressure, or the innocence you had. Trauma often happens in moments where you were vulnerable, overwhelmed, or simply doing the best you could with the tools you had. But hindsight convinces you that you should have acted with the knowledge you only gained afterward. This creates a distorted and punishing version of your past. You judge yourself with information, maturity, and insight you didn't have then. And this inner criticism doesn't just affect your memories, it affects how you show up in the world now. You may find yourself second-guessing your decisions, doubting your instincts, or sabotaging opportunities because a part of you believes you are unworthy or flawed. Healing begins when you start challenging that internal voice that keeps pointing fingers at you. It means looking at your past with compassion instead of judgment. It means acknowledging that you were human, not perfect, surviving, not strategizing. It means recognizing that responsibility belongs to the person or situation that caused the harm, not to the version of you who was simply trying to navigate the moment. When you stop blaming yourself, you create space for self forgiveness. And with forgiveness comes understanding. With understanding comes self respect. And with self respect comes the emotional freedom that allows real healing to take place. Number 5, pain transforms. When you give it purpose, pain becomes heavier when it feels meaningless. When you've lived through something that broke you, confused you, or changed you in ways you didn't choose, it's easy to believe that the suffering served no purpose, that it only took from you. But pain becomes destructive when you leave it in the dark, when you let it sit inside without direction or expression. It begins to define you instead of developing you. Many people stay trapped in their trauma not because they are weak, but because they haven't yet discovered how to turn their pain into something that fuels them rather than drains them. Giving your pain purpose doesn't mean pretending the trauma was good. It means allowing yourself to rise with the lessons it brought, the strength it demanded, and the insight it forced you to gain. Purpose doesn't erase what happened, but it stops the past from controlling your entire identity. There comes a moment where you realize that the very things that made you feel broken also gave you a deeper understanding of yourself and the world. You begin to see how your resilience was built, not in peaceful moments, but in the times where you had no choice but to keep going. Pain becomes purposeful when you use it to make better decisions, to set boundaries, to recognize red flags, or to deepen your empathy. It becomes purposeful when you use your experience to guide yourself toward healthier relationships, stronger self-respect, and a clearer sense of what you deserve. It becomes purposeful when it teaches you what you will no longer tolerate. Trauma often forces a level of self-awareness that people who haven't suffered may never reach. It strips you down to who you really are, revealing strengths you didn't know existed. When you begin to interpret your pain through the lens of growth rather than shame, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of your story and start seeing yourself as the one who survived it. Giving your pain purpose is also about expression. Pain that stays bottled up turns into bitterness, confusion, or emotional shutdown. But when you channel it into healing, creativity, self-improvement, or even helping others, the energy changes. It becomes something you can work with rather than something that works against you. You gain the ability to look back on your experience and say, "This didn't break me, it built something inside me." Purpose gives pain direction. It gives it movement, and movement is what stops trauma from becoming a permanent emotional scar. Number 6, healing requires boundaries and letting go. Healing isn't just about understanding your past or processing your emotions. It's about intentionally creating space where your peace, your growth, and your identity are protected. And that begins with boundaries. Many people who carry trauma struggle with setting boundaries because in their earlier experiences, their limits were ignored, violated, or dismissed. They learned to keep quiet, to tolerate too much, to stay in situations that drained them because it felt safer than risking conflict or abandonment. But healing requires a shift from people-pleasing to self-preservation. A boundary is not an attack, and it's not a punishment. It is the act of choosing yourself. It is a declaration that your well-being matters, that you are no longer available for chaos, disrespect, or emotional harm. Without boundaries, you stay stuck in the environments and relationships that keep reopening your wounds. With boundaries, you create the conditions where healing can finally take root. Letting go is equally essential, yet it is often the most difficult part of the healing process. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't affect you. It means releasing the emotional grip certain people, situations, or memories still hold over your life. Sometimes you have to let go of people who are incapable of meeting you where you are. Sometimes you have to let go of the version of yourself who survived by shrinking, pleasing, or tolerating. Sometimes you have to let go of the hope that certain relationships will change or that the apology you deserved will ever arrive. Letting go is not a betrayal of your past. It is an act of honoring your future. It requires courage to accept that not everyone can come with you into the next chapter, and even more courage to walk away from what once felt familiar but is no longer healthy. Boundaries and letting go are deeply connected. You cannot set boundaries while clinging to the fear of losing people. You cannot let go while believing that your healing depends on someone else's behavior. Both require you to choose yourself even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it means stepping into unknown territory. Healing moves forward the moment you stop negotiating your worth and stop giving unlimited access to those who haven't earned it. It moves forward when you finally understand that not everything that was part of your story is meant to stay in your life. Boundaries create safety, letting go creates space, and together, they create the freedom your healing has been calling you toward. You've carried your pain long enough. Now it's time to carry your power. Healing isn't about going back, it's about rising into who you were always meant to be. Keep choosing yourself, keep taking the next step, and trust that every bit of this journey is shaping a stronger, wiser version of you. You're not just surviving anymore, you're becoming whole.